Hey, welcome back to the Ping Pong Flick Show. My name is Chris Wong. Yes, today's video is going to be DC Extended Universe related. A couple of things has come up. I know I was going to talk about Infinity War, but I just talked to my friend today about it. He actually loved it. He really loved it, and I was surprised he didn't say anything online about it. So I was kind of wondering if he liked it or not. The interesting thing, though, is the friends that we both know who watched it with him actually said that it was too depressing and it was like a DC film, and he was like, "What? Like, how can you guys say that? It's in the comics. This actually happens in the comics. Why are you depressed? They're going to come back." So that is interesting that they thought that way, that because it's depressing, it's like a DC film. So that's funny. But I think it's pretty much what Marvel is. You know, it's usually all the Marvel movies, for the most part, ends on a happy note with the bad guys defeated, or even things like Civil War, where at the end, you know, or Winter Soldier, where it's like a half happy because they won, yet there were some problems still left. You know, no more Shield. Shield is the bad, was Hydra. In Civil War, it's broken apart, but there's a little bit of hope. So I think this really shook a lot of people, for people who thought that this is another Marvel movie. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to come out smiling and laughing. Of course, that's not how it happened, and I actually applaud that. I actually applaud that Disney went the way they did, and or Marvel went the way they did, and they had some balls, and they went for it, and I'm glad they did it. It's, yeah, sure, okay, so like if Avengers 4, yeah, most of them are gonna come back. That doesn't mean it should be any more, you should feel any less sad or feeling less of that depression, if you will, from that movie. You base it upon that movie. I mean, I knew Superman was coming back in Justice League. It didn't make me feel less sad that he died in Batman v Superman, so I don't see the argument there. So interesting stuff, but I'm gonna look forward more into Infinity War later as I try to research a little bit more and talk to my friend a little bit more. I think it's really interesting where Avengers 4 is going to come here and there. So what's going to happen after with Captain Marvel and all this other stuff. So it's really cool, really cool. So anyway, now to the DC Extended Universe, starting with something light. These are the posters of Teen Titans Go. Now they're dropping a trailer, I think, tomorrow. They did a teaser today about people on Twitter kind of saying that they don't want to watch Teen Titans Go. So they're making fun of themselves in a way, and then they're making fun of DC in general. They're making fun of different movies, and it's like, this is like a lighthearted Deadpool for the DC films, right? A lighthearted Deadpool for Warner Brothers. They can tease these things, and it's very apparent they're knocking down Justice League a little bit, trolling them with their posters. You see the pictures here, and so that's really funny. I think that's kind of cool. They're just playing lighthearted. It's a cartoon. It's for kids. You know, my kids will probably, I don't know if they will still like Teen Titans. They haven't seen it in a while, but Teen Titans Go is coming out July 27th. And it's just a good, fun thing for kids, so I'm all for it. I laugh at all the jokes that even when they tease their own universe, it's all fun and games, you know. So that's kind of cool in itself. The next thing is the Man of Steel 2. There's a lot been talk about Man of Steel 2, especially when Henry Cavill was being interviewed, and even Chris McQuarrie was being interviewed for Mission Impossible. So Christopher McQuarrie, who is the director of the Mission Impossible Fallout and Rogue Nation and all that, so he was actually asked, you know, someone had asked him about directing. He actually talked to Henry Cavill about a few ideas for Man of Steel 2. So, you know, ideally people would just ask that question if he would direct, he'd be interested in directing it. So, in a new interview with Cinepop, McQuarrie was asked whether he'd be interested in directing a superhero movie. And he said, "I never really thought about it," he replied. "I feel like if the story was right and the character was right, I love working with Henry. Henry's great." When pressed on to the topic or whether or not he'd be interested in directing Man of Steel 2, McQuarrie replied, "If Henry asked me to, sure, why not?" So that's interesting. All the power has gone to Henry Cavill. Henry Cavill, you have the power to choose your director do it. But so if you've already worked with Christopher McQuarrie and it seems like you've both had spun some ideas together about Man of Steel 2, I think that's the direction. Do it. Let's get it on the plate. Let's put it on writing, and get it out there. Let's do it. Have them direct Man of Steel 2 or Superman or whatever you want to call it. Let's get it on the boat. Let's get it going. So I think Henry Cavill is very eager, as you've seen his interviews before. Christopher McQuarrie seems very up for it, and there's been a lot of directors up for it. But if Henry Cavill has that, if that was really the thing that the producers and stuff that we want to make sure is that the Henry Cavill, the star of Superman, is going to be very optimistic about their director. He's the one that wants to choose a certain director, then do it. I say, if you love Christopher McQuarrie, then go ahead and do it. I am waiting for that. Not only that, though, Henry Cavill was also asked about Black Adam and Shazam, and he even mentioned that there are conversations going for a Black Adam fighting Superman. There's possibility of that, but for most likely, he said that Shazam or Captain Marvel and Black Adam are going to fight first, and maybe Superman will come in there. There's also those possibilities. There's also a possibility of having a Superman movie and Shazam showing up as a cameo, things like that. So that's all very interesting, cool, interesting, and just to hear him actually more talk about what's going on forward, and he seems, very confident that Superman will be coming back. The way he smiles and looks to the right, looks up, it's like he knows something, and I'm sure he does. I'm sure that his contract has actually been put together already. I'm sure he's already in the works. I'm sure there's got those Superman stories that he wants to tell, and I'm sure I'm even wondering if Christopher McQuarrie is already in the bag, and they're just playing coy with this stuff. So I don't know. I'm just being very hopeful that there are more Superman stories to come. That's the number one hero I want to see on the big screen more and more and more. I get really anxious when the new DC story comes out and it's not Superman. I'm like, what? New Gods? I mean, that'd be cool too. And Black Hawk and all this and Birds of Prey. And it was like, Superman? What about Superman? So I think, like Dave, the film junkie, is right. For a Superman news to drop, it's got to be big, like something you announce on a stage. And I think you're right, Dave. San Diego Comic-Con, that's got to be. If there is no Man of Steel 2 news on San Diego Comic-Con, that's when depression will start. That's when the depression will start. But anyway, we'll look forward to that. For now, the last movie we'll see him is in Justice League, and maybe we may see him in the Justice League Snyder Cut. Yes, more stuff from the Snyder Cut. I mean, when you think there's no talk anymore, and we're just gonna go on here from forward. Zack Snyder post on Vero wishing Gal Gadot a happy birthday, and it is a picture that we've never seen before. It is Wonder Woman, Diana Prince, in that what seems like that white dress she was in the museum, but with a trench coat. She's holding up that torch in some area or something, maybe going to the place where her mom shot that arrow or something. You look in the background, there seems to be 3 squares, what eerily looks like maybe possibly 3 mother boxes, drawings of it, and maybe this is where she learns the history of Steppenwolf, right? So, and this is where she goes and finds out about the history that she sees into the past or something, and able to see how Steppenwolf arrives and the evilness of Steppenwolf and all that whole battle scene without the dubbing of Wonder Woman. So it's going to be different, because we all know that shot by the lake with Bruce Wayne and Diana Prince, that was reshot. They weren't there. They were supposed to be talking in the Batcave, right? That moment. So that's what I think is happening here, is that kind of like how we saw how Jor-El talked to Clark or Kal-El inside the ship about the history and past. You see a little bit of that kind of artsy thing going on to show a little bit of the history, or even the beginning of Wonder Woman where she learns about Ares and the battle from before. It's like very artistic and stuff. It may not be like that, but I'm thinking it's along the same lines of her learning about the history of Steppenwolf in a more artistic detail. It doesn't have to be very, I've always felt like it's so spoon-fed, that dubbing, and it just didn't match. She was just reading off a story. So I think this is what would actually have happened. Maybe even her mom talked about it would have been better, but this is something that clearly we have not seen come. We didn't even think about her actually going to somewhere, a place, to find out about Steppenwolf. That never occurred, and that is truly surprising. Even though it's meant as like happy birthday, he's already teasing again. More to the Snyder Cut. What is this movie? How different is this movie from what we got? And that's really interesting and compelling, and I hope one day we get to see it. Now, there are some rumor monging and there's some talk of things are being worked on. I'm not totally 100% positive, but when I hear about these things and hear from different people, I get a little bit more hope. I have a little bit more faith in the project, and it's just one little detail that seems to be from all this is that it's if the studio will allow the general audience to see it, allow us to see it, or that part concerns me, because even though it's being made, if it's being made by the Zack Snyder and crew or somebody, even if it's being made, would Warner Brothers allow it to be shown to the public? That's my only concern right now. And I think by San Diego Comic-Con, if we don't hear of anything, I think my hope's going to go down. But that little bit of just seeing a picture, an image, you so wonder what was that movie that he was trying to make? What was it really? We know it's going to be really long, but it's so many things that we have not seen before, not even mentioned, like this picture, and you're like, man, what would have been if we've seen Zack Snyder's cut of Justice League? What could it have been? All right, guys. Anyways, that's it for tonight. Thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.